Hi, this is Shawn Parker with Fill in the Blank, and we are here to talk with one of the great leaders in our community in Central Ohio right now, a lady by the name of Ruth Edmunds. Ruth is the Director of Christian Engagement for the Center for Christian Virtue. I met Ruth through some political activities that were going on, and she actually was one of the most dynamic speakers, dynamic people, engaged, concerned about people that I've encountered in quite some time. So it is a huge honor to have Ruth with us. I want everyone to get to know her in a better, deeper, more meaningful way. So we're going to talk to her for a little bit about who she is, where she came from, what she's up to, and what's going to be happening in the future with things she is doing to make our society, our community, and the people in Central Ohio have a better experience, a better outlook, and a better opportunity for the future. So with that, Ruth, welcome. Glad to have you.
Hi, Shawn. It's good to be here and to, share with your listening audience at Fill in the Blank.
Good. Well, so on that, sorry, May, I gave you a nice lead in. Let's talk a little bit, if it's okay, about how you got here. I mean, we'd like to let people know how you found your way to where you are today, what that journey looked like a little bit.
You know, I have a little bit of a sick mind because I was like, well, back in 1963, James and Ruth got together. They hooked up. No.
What kind of probably happened that way?
Next thing you know, here she is. But no. So.
Love it.
That is funny. All right, get your head together, Ruth. Really, how did I get here? Really divine providence. Most of us, we find ourselves happening upon the thing that makes us really who we know we've been formed, made, and created to be. So throughout my life, what I've always known about myself is that I love people.
Mm-hmm.
I really appreciate and value relationships. That came as no surprise to me when I really realized what my name meant, Ruth, and that means friend, one who walks alongside.
Oh, nice.
And, I was raised in a household with a woman named Pearl, my grandmother, who only had a fourth grade education, but yet she had such great values and principles and ethics about herself. And so that's how she raised her 9 children in the inner cities of Baltimore, Maryland, and how she wound up having the opportunity to raise even her grandchildren, myself and my sister included, in her home in Baltimore. So I come from a family of Christians, a family of people who just love people. I come from a family, they're musically inclined. They love to enjoy life and travel. And I come from a family who does not talk about it or did not talk about being a victim in any stretch of the imagination. We just enjoyed family. We enjoyed going to church and being involved in our church community and being involved in our neighborhood community. That's what I grew up knowing. We didn't grow up talking about even politics. We just grew up loving neighbors, family, God.
Yeah.
And that just has stuck with me. And when I became an adult and realized that there were opportunities to volunteer and be engaged in society and the community even more, I just gravitated to it. It never dawned on me that I would not be engaged in the community, whether it's the neighborhood community or the church community or even the community of family that I was around. It just never occurred that you don't do that. And that just grew. So, the seed was planted by my grandmother. It just grew and it developed, it matured as I grew up and matured. And then one day I found myself involved with the Columbus branch of the NAACP. And it actually was led by a conservative leadership. And that was where the connection really happened. It was like everything that I was brought up to believe and think and know and understand was being lifted up through the leadership of the Columbus NAACP at that time by that leadership.
Okay.
And
so very positive.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, let's do this. And then it just kept going from there. It was, and, I became involved in, politics and government in the central city of Columbus.
Mm-hmm.
And then Franklin County. And next thing I knew, I was working for a member of Congress and working for the governor's office. And it just blew up. So
Wow.
It was very organic how it happened.
Yeah.
Absolutely not intentional.
But you blame this on your grandma, huh? Grandma Pearl?
Oh, yeah. Grandma Pearl. Oh, yeah. She really was the impetus for all of this. I still hear her words ringing in my ear. And, you may one day be better off, but you'll never be better than anyone. Own your stuff.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
That's super. Yeah, it's interesting because one of the things that I'm always interested in is that transition from period to period. Mm-hmm. How folks from the 40s and 50s, the Depression era folks met up and suddenly we're into the Vietnam era culture and we're headed into the culture that we're in today and then moving forward beyond that. And how that all plays together as the American story. Mm-hmm. And so many people talk about all these different American stories, and I always think, there's one American story. Mm-hmm. And while it has many components, it's the one that we have to get right moving forward. And I think of my background, I had loving parents, loving grandparents in that way as well. Do you think that Grandma Pearls are out there in the world today and that that's the message that kids are getting, or are we missing that in a big way? Is that a void that's happening out here?
It is a void. I would say, when certain well-known people began passing away, one of the people that I remember when, it was Maya Angelou.
Mm-hmm.
When
the poet,
Maya Angelou passed, I started seeing this phrase, greatness has left the earth. Mm-hmm. And then there was prior to her passing, there was a internationally known pastor and leader, Dr. Miles Monroe. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, it was a tragic airplane crash that killed he and his wife and several leaders of his church. When he died, it was like greatness has left the earth. And there have been others, and we can all think of that. Greatness has been leaving the earth, and you look around and say, where's the wisdom? Mm-hmm. Where's the voices of common sense? Someone once said to me, sense isn't common anymore. And that's true.
I say that,
it's not. And so, yes, we are missing that voice of wisdom, discernment, knowledge, and understanding, civility right now. And what's growing, what's manifesting, what is this whole sense of me, myself, and I. Mm-hmm. And no longer we and us, but me and I right now.
Yes.
Rather than we and us on our way, in its proper time, according to laws of, nature's law and God's law. That's how we used to govern our lives, according to nature's laws and God's laws. And then man's law. Well, now we're doing it just the opposite. It's my law, mm-hmm. then man's law, then nature's law, and maybe if we get there, maybe a little bit of God's law in it. And we have to shift this thing back. And those who are still here, the remnant, you and I and others who remember the time when we had that in order, we're going to have to be, doing exactly what we're doing here. And that's being vocal, being present, being the standard, and not being afraid to defend the faith, to defend the Constitution, to defend God, family and country, we now become the wisdom, the sages, the pawpaws, and the big mamas.
Yeah.
We're it, and you know, we've got to assume those roles, because if we don't, we already see that we're going down a very scary path.
Yeah.
But we will really lose our identity as one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Yeah, my concern, I mean, I see it in a big way. I see it in our urban marketplaces. I also see it in our countrysides where, and drugs is a big part of it, I think, the drug culture, where individuals are raising themselves without the grandmother pearl. So I'm going to go back to her a couple of times because I think that we
Sure.
have lost the succession of values in many respects. And we have people who are walking the streets and they don't have values, they don't have faith, they don't have the bedrock to understand that inside themselves is a greatness that they need to find and bring out and carry forward. And we're allowing it to happen. And we're also, to me, we're letting a lot of people self-isolate through internet technologies, through cell phone communications, where the humanity is being lost, where we don't get together and we don't feel the warmth in the room of one another, which it's more than just warmth. It's also people coming together. It's humanity.
Yeah.
And you just described that in a really, really amazing way, a little different way than I think I would have come up with that. What do we do? What steps can society in general do to open those doorways back to people? I mean, we've got education. Let's talk about that maybe a little bit. Education, I know you're working on, Backpack Bill and trying to understand, how kids can be loved and pulled together at a young age and nurtured. Let's talk about education and that component for a little bit.
Yeah. So when we talk about what we're losing in our culture today from where we used to be, there was a time in our country when the very fiber of the fabric of our nation was biblical worldview. They were principles that were founded in the Bible. And we were okay with that because, historically, that's just who we were. Biblical worldview was the foundation of our principles and our values. Now, it's not. So we don't value and respect one man, one woman. We don't value and respect marriage is between one man and one woman. And therefore, we've created these alternative, hybrid, dysfunctional scenarios for quote unquote family. And it just doesn't work well. And it doesn't work well because the creator of the institution set the standard.
Okay.
And what we've done is we've altered it, we've tweaked it, we've manipulated it and reconfigured it, and we still expect society to function properly based on this reconfiguration of family. And how that plays out is now you've got children who don't really have a sense of identity. We are now telling young children that they can be, if they're a biological boy, that they can be a girl. They can self-identify with themselves. We are now telling children that it is still a family if it's dad and dad, or if it's mom and mom, or if it's it and or, whatever your pronoun is. And it is confusing. It is creating all kinds of distress and depression in young children because the creator has established a fundamental principle that no matter what you do to it, it will be dysfunctional. So what we've done at Center for Christian Virtue, because we have school systems that have bought into this augmented and, reconfigured, they've accepted what's happening in the culture, and children are coming in so many different kinds of ways. And the school systems are now bending and bowing to all kinds of practices, home life practices, and trying to be all things to all people. what's happening
Yeah.
is that children, aren't getting a basic education by and large. We care more about how the child feels and how they feel about themselves. And, then can they read? Can they write? Can they do math computations?
Mm-hmm.
And yet there are some parents out there who are saying, no, schools have a basic and fundamental job, and that is to teach those foundational things. Leave the character building, the ethics, the morals to us, because that's our responsibility as parents. And so, because government funded schools are now going the way of this reconfigured standard of living, the Center for Christian Virtue, and let me say this, that the Center for Christian Virtue is a nonprofit, nonpartisan public policy organization that advocates at the Ohio State House for public policy that reflects the truth of the gospel. So, very simplistically, think of us as we're a Christian lobbying organization. Every other trade association and organization has a lobbyist. Well, the Christians have a lobbyist. That's who we are. And so we know that there are parents who are distressed about what's happening in government funded schools, whether it's in the suburb, whether it's in the central city, whether it's in rural communities. These government funded schools, public schools, have now become like the Gestapo for how children should be thinking and feeling and believing about themselves. So the
It's really
backpack
amazing
bill,
what they've done. I mean, they have
it's, yeah,
twisted, and for a 6-year-old child to go to school and enter that confusion where
Mhm.
you're only 6 years old, you can't figure your way through that, nor should you. I mean,
Nor
you should go
should
to
you.
school and say, hey, this is fun. I'm going to learn, how to add, and I
Mhm.
want to meet other people.
Mhm.
And we're challenging these kids with identity issues, with these grown-up issues that, frankly, I know a lot of 40-year-old people that can't understand what it's about. And
Exactly.
we're throwing it down on 10-year-olds.
Exactly.
Wow.
And so we have said at Center for Christian Virtue, enough is enough. We have introduced a bill. It's called the Backpack Bill. And essentially, what the Backpack Bill does is it establishes a fund. It's state funded,
Mm-hmm.
a fund, educational scholarship accounts. Kind of like if you're in the healthcare, you have these health savings
Yeah,
accounts.
absolutely.
So these would be
Which have been very
educational.
successful for
Exactly.
families.
So this would be an educational savings account. You would be eligible for it regardless. It doesn't have an income qualification. It doesn't matter if the school is failing or not. It just simply says that parents would have the right to have the state funded dollars travel with their child. So it's where the dollars follow the child rather than the brick and mortar.
Okay.
And so this is really, really important right now because it's giving parents an option to not have to be subjected to the government funded educational systems, public schools.
Mm-hmm.
Because right now, public schools are operating like they're the only thing that's, only game in town. And so until there is competition to these public institutions, educational institutions, parents are going to be suffering, and most importantly, our children are going to be suffering. So we're encouraging voters, registered voters, and citizens, whether you have a child in the school or not, to go to ccv.org, learn more about the backpack bill, learn how you can. We've got these cute little cards that look like backpacks, and you can send it off to your legislator and essentially say, I want you to support the backpack bill. It's an innovative education reform to ensure Ohio funds students and not bureaucracies. So this is one of the ways that we are challenging public policy that is affecting culture and putting the power back where it should be, and that is with the parent.
Yes.
And parents right now they are waking up, Shawn, and they want to know, what can we do to take back this educational system? And we're saying, this is where we start. We have to take these state funded dollars and assign it to the child and not to the school.
Now, I've always said that I've never met a parent who doesn't want the best for their kids.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, some parents want more for their kids than they want for other kids. And I've always said that's where the problem is, where we don't recognize that we need to help every child up every which way that we possibly can.
Mm-hmm.
The backpack bill for kids, are there enough schools out there? Because you're talking about school choice, you're talking about parents taking their kids where the kids are going to have the best opportunity to be successful in life with the value subsets that those families want their kids to be raised with. Are there enough schools out there right now to absorb those kids? Are we in balance with that? And I know that you're going to get a big pushback from the public education sector because they know best, and it's a money game. They don't want that money leaving their, leaving their coffers because it's very comfortable. So, do we need more?
You know
do we
what?
need more private schools?
We need more alternatives for sure.
Okay.
And whether that is what it doesn't need to be is right now these government educational systems. So you ask the question, are there enough schools to handle, let's say, a mass exodus? The answer is no.
Okay.
Which is why we're also, it's not that we are even hoping that that happens. We're not anti-public schools. I'm a product of a public school system. And so we're not anti-public school, but what we are saying is that competition, healthy competition will create excellence. And we know that because that's how it works in the free market system.
Yes.
And so, but there are Christian schools, there are charter schools, there are home schools. And
so they could take money to a homeschooling scenario.
Absolutely.
Okay. I mean, the results of homeschooling, every time I read them, I am blown away at how intelligent and how highly these kids score. And, and I know 20 years ago, my undergraduate's in education. I went through teaching and worked in schools, and, there was always a scoff like, well, kid's homeschooled. He's not going to be socially at the same level as other kids. He's not going to be academically. And we found the academics were completely, they were so far ahead that it was crazy because time on task and the way the pedagogy works, these kids were really at high functioning. And then socially, they were getting their value system, from a Grandma Pearl. They were getting their value systems from grown-ups who had established, well-defined value systems, opposed to getting their value systems from other kids.
Exactly.
And when you think of kids giving kids value systems, there's a delinquency level in that, and that's kind of a tough word because I never liked that with children, but that's oftentimes to me parents failing kids or society failing kids. So it's interesting. I didn't realize that was a part of it.
So, and let me just say just one more thing. The other piece that CCV is working on is encouraging churches to plant schools in their facilities. The large churches have multi-purpose rooms, for Sunday school classes and other Christian education purposes. But why not use them when they're not being used most of the time, 5 days out of the week for a school? And so we have the Ohio Christian Education Network that is working to establish relationships with churches. We are creating a turnkey system whereby a church that wanted to sponsor a school themselves, that we would support them, we would help them for the first couple of years to be able to develop their own. We want them to start with like K through 3 and then move up. But it is important, if we want biblical worldview, Christian principled people, we have to cultivate that. And it is the church's responsibility to do that.
Yeah. I'm going to jump backwards a little bit. Maya Angelou, the void that she left. Miles Monroe, the void that they left. Who's replacing them? Who are those next leaders that are standing out there that people can start to look at for their values again?
I think that you and I are sitting here, and we are a part of that. And we're not going to find those people anymore on the great platforms and in the big market square, because we have such a liberal-leaning culture anymore that it's not going to elevate people with strong conservative values. And conservative just means the traditional values. which happen to be, yes, biblically based.
Yeah.
But
Taking care of your
they're going to
neighbor,
be
taking care of your brother and your sister.
So who's the wisdom anymore? It's us. It's those of us who know what's right and what's wrong. Those of us who are not confused about what our gender is and not confused about what family is, not confused about the limitations of government, and not confused that we are in the greatest country in the world with the greatest constitution ever, because it has lasted the longest continuing constitution ever.
Yep.
So it's really the grassroots, those who are sitting in the pews on Sunday are gonna have to begin to stand up and speak out. It's the dry bones. And it's those like you and I, the prophetic voices that are heralding, wake up, wake up. In the scripture it says, speak to the dry bones and tell them to live. So we're having to be the ones who are speaking to those, that remnant, to wake up. And when they become awake, those who are conservative, who know that this country is going down the wrong path, but when they hear us and they hear our voice and they hear our passion, they become empowered and inspired, and then they will then stand up and speak out. So we're no longer looking for that Jesus model, that one big person, that, big talking head. It's from the grassroots up. It's each one of us being responsible and accountable to the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, and standing on it and professing it and proclaiming it. That's the era that we're in now.
Yeah, I say it's not about picking up a shovel or having a bulldozer. It's about everybody picking up a teaspoon. Mm-hmm. And we will move mountains with teaspoons.
Yep.
And we will open our doorways to one another, and we'll find kindness again, and we'll find that harmony. But everybody has to pick up the teaspoon and recognize that we are all collectively a part of that solution. So it's
exactly,
it's a huge piece. What else? So the CCV. Mm-hmm. What else do you guys do? What else are you doing out there?
So coming up this October 24th, we will be hosting the American Leadership Forum. It's an evening with the Ohio candidates for U.S. Senate. We have 5 of the candidates. It's being hosted at Genoa Baptist Church.
Okay.
And the moderator, we are excited, is radio host and author Hugh Hewitt.
Yeah, he's pretty famous.
He's pretty famous. He will be moderating this forum, and we're excited about it. You can go on our website, ccv.org, and register for this leadership forum on October the 24th. It's going to be in the evening. It's a Sunday evening. Mm-hmm. And, this is the way that we become informed, educated. This will be an opportunity for most of us to ask questions of these candidates. So who's coming? We've got Mike Gibbons and Josh Mandel, Bernie Moreno, Jane Timken, and J.D. Vance. So they've all committed. They're going to be there. There's going to be plenty of room. We need you to register. There is a registration fee, $20. That's general admission.
Okay.
And it's very reasonable, and you will get an opportunity to engage these candidates who want to become the next U.S. Senator. And we just encourage people from throughout the state of Ohio to come. It is in Westerville, Ohio. I should have said that. Westerville, Ohio, which is where Genoa Baptist Church is. Uh-huh. Come for that Sunday evening, and it'll be well worth your while. These are the kinds of sacrifices we're going to have to make anymore. Yes. It's not going to be easy anymore because the times are so dire that we are really going to have to be resolved that we will contend for the faith. We will go where we need to go. We will get up as early as we need to get up. We will stay up late as long as necessary, but we will defend the faith, and we will defend our freedoms and our liberties in this country. This is not the time to lay down and rest on the proverbial liberties. We have to contend for them.
We all have a job to do. I say we all have to pick up a teaspoon. We all have to carry it forward. And, some of those teaspoons are going to have a little more dirt in them than others. But we all, and again, one of the reasons we do what we are doing with with our club system, with the podcast, is we want the regular person to recognize that this government is a government of the people, by the people, for the people, and it is run by the people.
Yes.
And we are the highest denominator. We are a citizen is the highest title in our government, and we have to take that seriously in order to maintain the momentum so that America goes another 240 years. Otherwise, we won't. And that's what I'm afraid of, is we will not recognize it. And if that's the case, the opportunities just won't be there. The beautiful singing that families do and the wonderful elements are going to all look the same. And, that won't be fun.
Yeah.
What else can you tell us with what you guys are up to? The Center for Christian Virtue. Any other missions besides Backpack Bill? You've got the forum coming up.
Yes. Absolutely.
And then I want to hear a little bit more about you as well, because you're a star, and you might not know it, but you are a star. So,
bless your heart. Well, I will say this: I encourage all of your listeners to go to ccv.org. That is our website, ccv.org. A lot of people might remember previously our name was the Citizens for Community Values.
Okay.
Citizens for Community Values. So we kept our initial CCV, but we made a shift at the beginning of the year because we wanted to be very intentional about who we were, why we existed. And so Center for Christian Virtue. And we understand that when we say that we can't, it's just not words. We have to be that.
Yes.
And so we take that very seriously. And you talked about how things are supported in our country. So Center for Christian Virtue is a nonprofit, nonpartisan, Christian, Judeo-Christian based organization. We've been around for 30 plus years, and we're not funded. We're not in any way government funded. We exist solely from the charitable contributions of people who share our faith values. And so we just encourage people to support the work that we do because, again, every day we're at the State House. We were front and center with the heartbeat bill that passed in 2019 that said that once a heartbeat is established, an abortion cannot be performed here in the state of Ohio. Years ago, when there was the Defense of Marriage Act, we were front and center with that. And so, again, we are at our core, we're called a family policy council.
Okay.
We care about families and we fight for Christian, the Judeo-Christian definition of family. And that's who we fight for every single day. And so we also engage shepherds of God's church, which otherwise are called pastors and priests of church congregations.
Okay.
And we will also speak at churches, which we have done. We provide educational resources on how to engage in government for pastors and churches. And we do that through our Church Ambassador Network initiative. So we have a special initiative for pastors and churches to educate, equip, engage, and activate them in engaging in public policy, how to connect your faith with government. So we have that, and that's called the Church Ambassador Network. And then we have the Ohio Christian Education Network, again, where we are supporting and undergirding Christian schools throughout the state of Ohio in the legislature. And then we recently began our third leg of advocacy, and that's with businesses. So we have the Ohio Business Partnership, where we keep businesses informed about what we're doing.
Yeah.
And so those are the three legs, and our tabletop is the public policy. And there is this, many of your listeners may have heard of the 7 mountains of cultural influence. Mm-hmm. There's government and church and family and education, arts and entertainment, media, and government. And so we've got the education, the business, and the church legs.
Okay.
Education, business, church, and government.
All right.
We have 4 of the 7 legs that we operate in at Center for Christian Virtue. And we just encourage every one of your listeners, if you are conservative, you will find this organization to be, to beat like your heart beats.
Okay.
And we invite you to take advantage. We have a podcast. It's called The Narrative.
Okay.
Where we will talk with leaders throughout the state and the country about issues that are impacting our culture. So you'll want to sign up to get those when the podcasts come out. And then we have what's called Faith and Works once a month. And these are two-sided handbill that we send out to churches and we'll send them to your nonprofit organization. On the one side, it's how do we strengthen your faith on certain issues. This month is our unemployment benefits helping or hurting. How do we strengthen your faith on this issue? We pull our data from credible sources like the Colson Center. From the Colson Center. And then on the back side of this, it's like, we give you prompts. Here's what we need to be praying about. Here's what we need to take action on. And here's how you can join us on this issue. So we are always providing lots of resources, whether it is speakers to come out to your organization, your church, your ministry, or if it is actual media, these events like we're doing October 24th, or we provide the podcast that's online, and we have our website is very easy to navigate, and it is very rich in information, and then you can call us.
Nice.
we've got great folks. So it's a wonderful resource in the state.
How do you guys sleep? Do you guys ever get any sleep?
No, we don't. We really we don't. We don't sleep because the enemy doesn't sleep.
That's true.
And so we don't. We're very passionate about what we're doing, and we're very focused and committed to this is our mission field. And so in a lot of ways, Shawn, we are modeling how we should be in our culture right now, how conservatives should be vigilant and
involved,
Absolutely.
engaged, aware,
Yeah.
And watching. Vigilant is good. One of the words, I looked at center. I always say, get to the center of the question, be in the center. When you leave your center, you get off base.
Yep.
Christian. Obviously the value sets are just there inherently for anyone that understands that. And if you don't, I hope people that they'll research it. And the word virtue. It's a word we don't use enough in our society anymore. It's an important word because it all encompasses everything that we should be and how we ought to be acting.
Absolutely.
So I love that. It's all very, very good. Let's get one more question for you on the way out. Are we winning or are we losing? And if we aren't on the right track, what do we do?
We are winning.
Good.
We absolutely are winning.
Love it.
Yeah.
Tell us about it.
Yeah. We're winning. We're winning because we have and who's the we? The we are conservatives, and what that means, it's not necessarily Republican, although conservative principles and values are those that are most aligned with the Republican Party. But we are we're conservatives, and I should say the other way, the Republican Party's values and principles are conservative. But we are winning because we have righteousness on our side. One of my former mentors said, truth crushed to the earth will rise. And so you cannot kill truth.
Ooh, that's big.
You can crush it,
big.
but you cannot kill it.
Yeah.
And so truth will always win. And that's what we are standing on. And that truth is not my truth. It's not your truth. It is the truth that is founded in, once again, God's law and nature's law. And those two laws, those two pillars, they don't change. You're going to have day and night. You're going to have your seasons. They may be shortened or whatever, but you're going to have the seasons. You're going to have, you can't have a tree without having a seed. It's just a fundamental principle of nature. You just don't get a tree. It has to start with the seed, and then it has to go through the maturation process. And then there's this notion, again, of God's law, one man, one woman. That's the way it works, and his laws tell us how we are to treat each other, how we are to respond to attacks. It tells us how we are to live, listen, guard your tongue, for out of it flow the issues of life. All that we need to learn how to live peaceably among each other. And so we are winning because truth crushed to the earth will rise. And we have to continue to stand on that. We cannot give in and give up because the times are difficult. So many times in our nation's history, we have been at the brink, just at the brink of disaster, and we come out of it. And that's because this nation has called on God. We still open up Congress every session with prayer. Even at the State House sessions, the legislative sessions begin honoring God. And even if they did remove the legalization of praying in school, you can't stop someone from praying.
Yeah.
That's an internal thing. You don't have to speak outwardly to pray. You can pray inwardly. I mean, the Bible says pray without ceasing. How are you going to do that? Well, that's because you have a mind of prayer. Your whole being is prayerful. You're being mindfully prayerful. And so last year when COVID hit, we had more of the body of Christ calling CCV, wanting to know how, what were they supposed to do? How do you navigate? And I say that, 2 Chronicles 7:14, the if my people prayer became the new John 3:16, because everybody was praying and seeking God's face and turning from their wicked ways, because we knew we needed God to hear us, forgive our sins, and heal our land. So we are always winning. We may lose a skirmish, here or there, but ultimately, we are winning, and we must continue to confess that, because the thing that you confess is the thing that you manifest.
Mm-hmm.
Again, what you confess is what you manifest. And so, yes, we are winning. You're here, Shawn. Thank you so much for this platform.
Yeah.
I'm here sharing, the good news about what's happening here with this organization, CCV. I'm here giving of myself, sharing my story, which is, it's an American story, as I said. It's not a black story. It's not a white story. It's an American story of how you can go from being, growing up in poverty, for all intents and purposes, in the ghetto, if you will. And yet, out of that, here I am with the history that I've had. I remember
there is no poverty when there's love.
Well, there you go.
Okay, there is. There's lack of things, I always say, but when you hear the love, because I've seen so many families and so many things, but when the love is there, love replaces all those things. But even well-to-do people look and they're like, well, I'd like the Ferrari. I want the newer Ferrari. If they don't have love, the Ferrari's not going to fill the gap.
Absolutely.
So the love, love is power. Love is the answer.
Well, when you look at across the waters in some of the most quote unquote impoverished third world nations, they have family.
Mm-hmm.
They have community.
Yeah.
They're happy. And could they have other things? I'm sure they could, but they have strength of family, and you see that. And so I don't want to sound like, well, it's easy for you to say you're here in America, with all the, accoutrements to you. But if you go across the waters and you see people who have far less than what we have, they do have a sense of love for mankind and each other. And that's what keeps us strong. And that's really what makes us be the winner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah.
Well, let's go with that. So Ruth Edmunds has filled in a big blank. I think people have a much better understanding of the Center for Christian Virtue, a better understanding of you, and I hope that we can keep this conversation going up the road so we can touch base and make sure that your message is out there in a bigger way, and we all pick up our teaspoon and carry the mountain forward. So
absolutely. And if anybody ever wants to follow me as well, because I know, we picked up some followers due to a really, cool thing that, I jumped off the CCV bandwagon for a few weeks and to pursue what I know God called for me to do. And a lot of people were introduced to me. I would just say, I also have a website. It's ruthedmunds.org.
Okay.
ruthedmunds.org. I have a Twitter account and I have a Ruth Edmunds Facebook page, and you can follow me on there too, because I also have a platform where I am sharing more of the good news and how just an average person,
Mm-hmm.
a humble individual citizen is speaking up and speaking out, and we can all do that. So I'm trying to model how to be a voice in the earth for goodness and righteousness through those platforms as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. Well, thanks for being with us, and keep doing what you do because
Thank you.
the world needs it. Thanks.
All right.
Hey, thanks for giving us your time to listen. You've been listening to Fill in the Blank with Shawn Parker, where we talk about the issues of politics and the geopolitical marketplace as well as economics. If you like our channel, please subscribe to us at Fill in the Blank on YouTube, and be sure to listen every week as we come back to you with some of the most thought-provoking people of the day. And learning is always the key to what we're trying to do.